The first step in creating a text block is to count out enough papers for all of your signatures. Here I'm creating 4-page signatures. That means I'm going to need to count out 20 pages, and then I'm organizing them in groups of 4. The next step is to fold all of the pages in each one of those signatures. So here I am individually folding each page to make sure that I get the big crease in all the pages, and then I will stack those into their group of 4. I'll repeat this for 4 more times, so to create 5 full signatures for this text block. When you've finished organizing your signatures, it's now time to measure out the stitching holes that you're going to be using in this binding. So here I'm going to take 1 page out of my signature, I'm going to lay it flat, and just for the sake of this video, I'm going to draw a line so you can see the midline that I'm going to be measuring here. This is a half sheet of paper that was cut in half, and my midline is going to be 140 millimeters long. I'm going to put 5 holes in it. That'll be enough for this. So whatever your length is, you can divide that by 5 if it's different from 140 millimeters. So I'm going to mark it 70 at 35, and then I'm going to hit 17 millimeters. And then I'm going to do it on the other side as well. So here I'm going at 35 millimeters, and then I'm going to move the ruler to measure out 17 millimeters. That will give me 5 holes on this for the binding, which will be plenty of holes for this size of book. The next step is to take your awl and poke holes where that intersection ends across the midline or the fold of your signature. Poke through the paper, and then you're going to use this paper as a template to poke holes through the rest of your signatures. You'll just nest it in the middle of the signature group, and then you will poke holes all the way through until you reach the outside of that bottom page. After you've poked those initial holes, bring your awl back through each one of the holes that you've poked, just to widen it a little bit and make sure everything is aligned. Don't make the hole too big because your threaded knot can be easily pulled through that hole. And then the next thing to do here is just to repeat this through all of the rest of your signatures. Lining it up carefully, poking those initial holes, widening those initial holes, and then go on to the next signature. If you used one of your signature pages as a template, then make sure that you nest that back inside your signatures so that all of your signatures have the proper amount of pages. The amount of thread used in this binding isn't critical, as you can easily tie off and start a new thread. Here I'm using about 3 feet of thread, and it's doubled over, so that'll give me about 1.5 foot of thread to use to get started with. Waxing your thread can reduce the snags and tangles in your thread, as it will help the thread slide through the paper easily. After you've waxed it, you can go ahead and thread your needle. Here I'm using a curved needle, but you could absolutely use a straight needle if that's what you have. And then I will pull it through and then double it over and tie it off in a knot at the end. This is also a good time for me to explain the kind of thread I'm using. Here I'm using a very thin thread. This is good for books that are going to have lots of signatures, lots of pages. This will prevent your book from getting too thick on the spine because the thread is adding width to all of those signatures that you're adding. And so the thinner the thread you can use, the less expansion you can expect when everything is sewn together. Okay, so to get started with sewing, start with the bottom hole. On the back side of your signature, pull all the way through and pull that knot up close to the edge until it's snug. Careful not to pull too hard because you can easily pull that knot through the hole. Now you're just going to sew over and under all the way through these signatures. Make sure you pull any loose threads as you go along here. You can see that I'm trying to identify which one. There it is. I pulled it tight so that all of my thread stays even. So I'm just alternating here, going in and out through the front and then back into the back side, coming back through the back side, making sure that I pull all those strings tight, all the threads tight, so that there aren't any loose ends that can get knotted. Once I go through this top hole, then I'm just going to reverse directions and go back through so that I have a full line of thread binding the whole way through, so it will look like it's one single thread. It's just going in and out of all of those holes. Alright, I'm coming up to the last hole here, and I'm going through the hole, and then I'm going to tie around that last thread, pull it into a knot, and then pull it through. And if you've done everything correctly, when you pull this through on the back side, you're going to pull it until you feel that knot kind of pop through the paper, and then everything should be good. Except for here, I pulled the knot completely out of the thread. So I'm going back through one more time, going to give it a shot, see if I can't tie it up. Oh, I pulled everything through this side. Now that's a bummer. But because I have a knot in that end, I'm just going to zip it through that knot. And then I'm going to lace it back in, tie another knot here. To finish that off, pull it in tight. And then I'll put the needle back through and pull that knot and all that extra thread back through onto the back side, which is where I want it to be so that it's not showing. So I'm going to struggle here for just a little bit to get it through, but you'll see that eventually I'll get it through and that all of the threads and knots will be on the back side, and when we bind it, all of that will be hidden out of sight. Now, take your next signature, start in the corresponding hole that you just came out of, coming out, starting from the back side, going through the front, and then going back out through that second hole. Now this time you're going to pull it tight, and instead of going in and around, you are actually going to pull it in tight. You're going to go through the threaded lines that you started off with. You can see here I'm working underneath the thread. I'll pull it through. I'll come through on the other side of that knot and pull it tight, and that will pull the signature in tight. And then I'm going to go back through the hole again. So I will go back through to the middle. You can see now I'm creating a full line of thread again, and then go through the middle hole. Then after I pull this out, just again, I'm going to start off onto the right side there, go underneath that thread. Then I'm going to come back underneath on the left side of that knot, underneath. That's going to hold it tight, go back through the hole. And because I've gone all the way around those threads, I can't be pulled back through. So I don't have to knot it, so I'll pull that in tight, get it snug. Then do the same thing again, through the hole, underneath the thread, around the other side of the loop, and then back through the hole. Now, getting ready to go through that last knot, that last hole. Bring the book up so everyone can see, Curtis. There you go. I see I'm running low on thread, so I'm going to go back through. I'm going to go underneath that string. I only have one side to do it this time, so that's all I can do. Going to pull that up, put my next signature on top. This time, with my new signature on top, I'll start with the top hole since I'm at that end of the line. I'll go through the top hole. I'll pull it from the back side and through the middle. I'll go back out that second hole. And now I'm getting ready to tie off this thread and start a new thread. So I'm going to just go underneath one time now because I'm only going through the second set of signatures. So I only need to go through that underneath and come back through. With the curved hook, it works easily. And then back into the hole. Here, I'm just going to slide the needle underneath the thread, do a single knot, go back through the thread, pull it tight, and then pull it back through the hole and cut the threads. Now I start the process all over again. This time I'm going to use a little more thread so I can finish off the book without having to rethread it. So here I'm pulling out about 4 feet of thread, and then when it's doubled over, that'll give me a 2-foot length. And I need to wax it first. Then I'll pull it all the way through the thread, and then I'll tie it off and knot it at the end. And then I'll start sewing back through that hole again, just like I did before. I'll come back through the same hole. Okay, now that I have it all knotted, I'll pull the thread tight so that there's even amounts of thread on both sides of the hook. Pick up my signatures that I have and bring the book back up so we can see I'm going through that second hole where I finished and tied that knot off. I'll bring that all the way through, pull those threads so that I don't have any loose threads or knots on the outside, and then go back through the hole. And I'll continue to do this all the way through to the end of this signature. Okay, I'm going through the last hole on this signature, so I'm going to pull this tight, get ready to put the new signature on top, and start this process all over again. You can see I'm lining out all the holes up. I'm going to go through the corresponding hole all the way from the back side through to the middle, and then pull it through that second hole. Once I've done that, I'm pulling it tight. Now I don't have to go, as I pull it tight and I pull my needle through, I'm only going through that last signature. So through that third signature, I'm going to pull it in between the third and the fourth signatures there. I'm going to pull those threads tight and then go back through the hole again. So I am just constantly working my way up the signatures. I don't have to go all the way back down to that bottom one to tie it off. In fact, if I did go all the way down to the bottom one, the first signature that we started with, then it would pull all the signatures out of whack. So anytime you are sewing and doing this kettle stitch, which is going back down and looping it with the signature underneath, you're only going down one set of signatures to tie it around and then to loop it back in through all of your holes. You'll notice here as I pull this through that on the back side I've got kind of a mess there. I ended up pulling a knot through that I didn't realize I had until it's too late. And so I've got a bunch of threads there, but if I'm careful enough, I can push those off to the side and come back through the hole without it causing any difficulties with the binding. And all that's going to be hidden later on anyway, so I don't have to worry about it too much. So that's why I'm not doing anything about it. I especially don't want to cut that just in case it actually cuts through the thread and then the binding would come unraveled from there. And here I'm starting with the last signature. So I've just come through like I have all those times before, come through the back side, in through the middle, pull it in tight, work my way down through all of the holes. Now, if I would bring my book up here in the middle so we could all see it, that'd be a little nicer. I'm just going to continue to make sure that I pull all those threads tight as I work through this so I don't have any loose binding. And then when I get down to that last hole, there's just a simple tie off when we get to that point. And now I'm going to the last time through, I'm going to loop it around signature number 4. I'm going to pull it tight. I'm going to pull the thread back through that last hole. Having a hard time here, finding the, there it is. And then once I pull it all the way through, I'm just going to loop it around that thread going underneath, pull the thread back through, pull that tight, get a nice tight knot, and then you'll end up pulling the needle and the thread back through the hole. You'll pull it until you hear and feel the knot pop through onto the back side, and then trim your threads, and that's it. That's how you create a sewn text block.